and welcome to the Connection Compass podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Louise Evans. Today is another solo episode where I share reflections on building confidence through showing up imperfectly, how somatic yoga has helped me notice what I've been ignoring, what it has felt like to begin writing again and stepping back into my creativity. There's something about this season of spring turning into summer that invites new beginnings, but not through force, but through allowing. In this episode, I also explore what's been unfolding as I move through my own soul story, what it means to surrender, and how creating space rather than rushing can reveal what's truly meant for us. I touch upon spirituality, the echoes of a Catholic upbringing, and the desire so many of us feel for something deeper, more expansive, and more personal. This episode is an invitation to slow down, to listen inward, and to give yourself more than just a few seconds of your own attention. Hello, it's Andrea here with another solo episode. I chose to do these reflective episodes in between guests because I really wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to share more of my thoughts and the work that I've produced as well. It may be that I don't do one every other week, but I certainly want to do more during each series of the podcast. So, what have I been working on since I was here last? Well, I finally submitted my somatic yoga assignment, and I've still got more to do, but for now, that's the part that needed to be in. There's more to come. I still haven't got my certificate, but there's a few different stages and a few things to do that can't always be done right away in one go. So I need to attend a retreat, and I also have some filming to do as well as a class. But I really enjoy learning about somatic yoga, and it's just been something that I've really needed for me, not just about learning it to teach other people and the theory around it as well, but it's been important for me, and the practice of looking inwards, even though I have a regular practice of journaling and meditation and creative, intuitive thought and the stories that I write and letters that I write for the seasons. But it's been a really big part in noticing me, and admittedly things that perhaps I wasn't really paying attention to. I've also started writing on Substack again. I took a little break for a few weeks. Now, Substack, I have 2 letters on there. I have A Seasonally Guided Life, and I have Leading with Connection. And I am restarting to write them both. So, A Seasonally Guided Life is all about the seasonal work, and then Leading with Connection will be more based around the connection with ourselves through yoga, through our workplace, the connection with each other. A Seasonally Guided Life is weekly, and I'm moving back to the routine of Sunday Substack. Monday is Reflective Monday, where we have a situation with one question to reflect on through the week. And then the podcast goes out on a Wednesday on Substack as well, along with all the other platforms that it goes on. And then I'm thinking of doing a Leading with Connection maybe once or twice a month. Not sure. I've still got to work that one out yet. And I'm really excited about getting back to writing. I plan a very, very creative spring, summer, late spring, all the way through summer is my most creative time. It's where I have lots of new ideas, where I action orientated, putting things together. I don't know if I told you last time, but before I put the seasonal soul story out, the one that's called Renewal in February, I did the content myself to see what came up for me. So, Renewal is about deep heart's desire that you've forgotten about and you want to bring it forward and start to put actions toward that deep heart desire. And what came up for me when I did that content was about 10 years ago, I wrote a manuscript for a novel. And I remember when I finished it and I read the novel, and I remember thinking, I really enjoyed writing this, but this isn't for now. It's for some time in the future. And I put it to one side. And when I was doing the renewal content, that's what came up to me, was to pick that manuscript up again. So I'm going to be doing that through the summer. And so if you're interested in doing renewal, the details are in the show notes. Particularly if you're feeling a little bit stuck, you're not quite sure which direction to go in next, it's a good one to do. You have a soul story, you have reflective points, and you have a meditation as well during that. The pack is £14. I've also been recording more podcast episodes. You know, one of the things that really surprises me the most about the podcast is sometimes topics that come up that I don't intend to come up at all. And one of the things that comes up on these podcasts that is never intended, I have never entered a conversation thinking, I'm going to talk about Catholicism. I think we have quite a lot of spiritually minded people on the podcast, and they tend to have been brought up within the Catholic religion. And there's obviously various different degrees, different levels of the religion, from absolute devout practicing Catholics to people that believe, have followed the religion, but it's not really embedded in their lives. And then you have people like me who, and some of our podcast guests, who don't really bother with it anymore. And I don't think it's because we don't believe in God, because we clearly do. We believe in something greater. But I think it's that recognition that actually we need something more. We need something more explorative and more fluid in our lives, particularly in the world and how it is. And I don't think we can always do that within the religion. And certainly in one of the conversations that comes up a little bit later in the podcast with Sean Grant is his need to start to question about what was being taught within the Catholic religion over time. He started to question, he started to ask different questions. He was really feeling the need to know more answers. So I just always think it's really interesting that that comes up, and without that intention. So the other thing that I started is a new Instagram for Seasonally Guided. So it matches with the Seasonally Guided Kajabi. Growing the body of work, the Connection Compass framework over 10 years, there's been lots of twists and turns. Test the patience of a saint, I tell you. But there's been times when the work has needed to be separated, and there's been times when the work has needed to merge together. And what's coming forward for me is that my focus at the moment is that connection with the self and connection with nature. and I needed something to fit together with the Kajabi. So it's an old Instagram account that I had. I had a creative account called Words from the Heart Space, and I've just rehashed that to change it into a seasonally guided life. So we'll have, the Substack on there. We'll have an affirmation Monday, might have some episodes of the podcast if I feel that they fit on there. We'll certainly have some yoga on there, some meditation as well that links in with the seasons. So I'll put those details in the show notes as well, along with the link to renewal if anybody wants to do that soul story. I've also been working on the next soul story, and I mentioned in my last solo episode about how this second seasonal soul story has taken quite a significant amount of time to come together. And up until about 10 days ago, I'd only put the structures in place, the ideas, some of the themes, some of the thoughts. I didn't have a name for the archetype. I didn't have the animal symbolism that I was going to use. I hadn't really connected it to the moon cycles either. I just had this list of themes that I wanted to include in. So, in the next seasonal soul story, it's funny how it all came together actually. I decided to go to one of the RHS gardens on a rainy Sunday. I had my umbrella in tow and I had my flask with a warm drink in it. And I just sat under a gazebo with a drink and I just stared across the grass where all the daffodils were dancing, and something just cracked and opened, and this idea, this story just really came forward. And it just shows you that when you're in that place of, what am I going to do? Why is this not coming together? Oh, this is really hard. I can't do it. And I'm letting myself down. I'm not writing it in the way that I thought I would, or produce it in the way that I thought it would. And then the moment that you let go, it just comes rushing in, the idea, the story, and how it flows together. So in the next one, it's called New Beginnings. New beginnings, very important for the spring time of year. And we meet an archetype called Johanna. And Johanna is struggling with fear, with anxiety, and moving towards a new beginning. And she's just in this really tricky place and just yearning to be in a different place of joy and happiness and freedom. And so, a bit like the same when we did renewal, this is about that self reflection, learning from a creative point, thinking about things from a different perspective, meditation, journaling, intuitive thoughts, and writing coming forwards, and working out how this situation is playing out in your life. The whole point of it is that it's from your perspective. The stories that I write, the questions that I set, they're there to be reflected upon from your point of view. So you have complete agency over your thoughts and feelings and how the story shapes into your life. I really enjoy doing them. I love how they're taking their time to come together, and different ideas, the animal symbolism that comes in. I'm really looking forward to writing more and seeing where we're going to be in 12 months' time, how these are going to come forwards. I'll be particularly interested to see if there are any masculine archetypes that come forward as I write there. So far, it's just been female ones. Although the animal symbolism within the soul stories, like the red pole, and in the new beginnings, we have the lark. They have a masculine energy to them. So we'll see if that flips a little bit later in the year, particularly when we're moving towards the summer month. And so, talking of new beginnings, Ashley and I, we had a conversation on the podcast last week about slowing down. And it's quite interesting because we live in a world that just moves at such a fast pace that I don't know how much people are noticing, not just about the world around them, but in themselves as well. And what I've seen in the yoga world is that there is a difficulty in coming to and sitting with yourself. People don't want to do it. They want to resist it. They feel uncomfortable relaxing or having that feeling of being relaxed. They resist it. They push against it. And I do wonder why. And is it the resistance to not wanting to look inside of yourself? Is it a fear of what they might find there? My thoughts are that when you look inside yourself, that there isn't really anything there that you don't know. Just maybe an awareness that actually something that you're carrying has been impacting you far more than what you thought it would. And this resistance to surrender. And often in yoga, in the spiritual world, we often hear these terms of letting go and surrendering. And I've been in this world for 14 plus years, and I'm only really learning those answers myself, what it feels like to surrender. What does it really feel like to let go? There's never really any explanation around that. And I think the exploration comes from yourself. So I don't think anyone can tell you exactly what's that like. I think you have to really sit with yourself and listen in to how that is for you. And it's certainly something that I'm just learning myself through somatic yoga. What does surrendering feel like to me? And I think Ashley really hit the nail on the head when she said it was about being present in a moment and not actually thinking about the future and not actually thinking about the past. And I certainly what we see in the world around us is there's a lot of focus on what's happened in the past. There's a lot of focus is what's going to happen in the future. Very little focus on what's happening in the present and how things really are for us. And it's in the present that's where life is. We're living it now. The only moment that we have is now. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes, what's going to come in the future, really. And if we do talk about the future, it's usually guessing or from a place of hope or wish. And sometimes it's worth just sitting still in a moment by yourself and just asking, how am I feeling in this moment? And really sitting in silence and just focusing in and listen and let the words to come forward, to rise up. Ashley and I talked about shedding parts of ourselves, our old skins, if you like, and it can be quite hard, that self-reflection and recognizing that you need to let go of things to move forwards. Sometimes there's some really hard truths, and we have to admit to ourselves that we've put ourselves in situations that haven't been particularly good for us. And we just have to accept the decisions that we made and make peace with it and know that we only did the best that we could at the time. So I'm still doing my 100-day public speaking challenge on TikTok. Today is day 43. And one of the things I talked about yesterday was about new beginnings, that with new beginnings, there's a process of shedding these old skins, letting things go, not holding on to control, not to control what is happening underneath. And I'll explain a little bit more about that towards the end of the episode and what that means. So, when we have these new beginnings, they don't just seem to happen straight away. There's a shedding of the old, and then there's a point at which we seem to land in a place of stillness where nothing happens. So it's almost like wintertime when all the growth is happening beneath the veil of the earth and we can't see it. Perhaps we can feel, we can sense the rumblings of new beginnings, but we don't actually see it. It's not in physical form pushing through the earth into our physical worlds. And sometimes we can be in that place of stillness for quite some time. And there are a lot of emotions that go on there. There can be feelings of frustration and perhaps upset and frustration that you're not moving forwards, but perhaps we need this time to make sure that we have let go of all the old parts of ourselves and we need the rest before we step into those new beginnings. So we have new energy, fresh energy that helps us move things forward, which then takes me to our episode next week. Now, I have been preparing myself for some time. I knew the time would come when I would want to have some conversations on the podcast that I would find really difficult. And I started, I suppose, that conversation, particularly with Philip, about why there are so many women who came to Earth knowing in their hearts that they wanted to be mothers but didn't get to be mothers. And I suppose that for me was the start of those conversations. So I know coming up over the year, we're going to be covering things like fertility and topics like childness not by choice. And next week, we have an upcoming episode with Marina, who is a therapist based down in London. And we're going to be talking about dating and relationships and all the things that happen in the modern dating world and lead into a relationship. Now, the conversation goes quite deep and it's really made me realize how much I've been carrying, particularly around my dating experiences and not really paying attention or not paying attention because that's not right, but I think those experiences were really painful and I've been trying to control the narrative. So those feelings and thoughts that they don't really come to the surface, but in this particular conversation that happens next week, Marina, those thoughts and feelings and realizations do come to the surface. And let's go back to what I was talking about before about when we're shedding those skins, that the old things that we no longer need, that we're getting rid of, that we're healing from, that sometimes we don't realize how much we've been holding on, how much we've been carrying ourselves without telling people and, not wanting it to come to the surface because, you're afraid of what people will say or see in you. And next week's conversation is certainly that. It's a great conversation and I really enjoyed it, but I did have to do a little bit of inner work after it. And once that conversation comes, when we have that when we publish that conversation next week, I'll definitely do another reflective episode after it, because I think I'll have some more things to say on that particular topic when we get to it. So have a moment to sit still and don't rush through the world as quickly as you do. Take some time to notice. One of the things I've noticed is some of my videos, they do really well, and then others, they don't do well at all. Sometimes I think it depends on the timing that I post them. I haven't really thought too much about the timing strategy. I just do them when I need to do them and don't really think too much of them. But there was one particular video that hadn't done particularly well, and people disappeared after 6 seconds. Now, not really giving somebody a chance longer than 6 seconds is not gonna create connection, and in 6 seconds, you hardly have the opportunity to take a breath in and say, "Hello, my name is," and those 6 seconds are up. What I'm trying to say is, how is that actually reflecting in our modern day world? So, how quick are we to just dismiss somebody? What we need to remember is that on the other side of those 6 seconds might be something that you really needed to hear that day. That person that's speaking to you may be holding something, might tell you that changes the course of your life or the course of a decision that you need to make. So for this week, why not just give people more than 6 seconds? Just give them the time and listen to what they've got to say and have a conversation with someone. And know that you don't have to do all this on your own. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and take care. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Connection Compass podcast. If you think this episode will help somebody else, please leave a review. For all the details of access to renewal, to seasonally guided, please don't forget to check the show notes. And remember, keep talking, keep connecting for a more interconnected world.